Listen Up with Jim Potts. Listen up, business owners, CFOs, human resource managers, and all managers and supervisors. Jim Potts is answering and addressing your questions and concerns, helping you stay out of court. Furthermore, please be advised that Jim's answers are not legal advice and are only intended as a guide based on his years of experience. The phone lines are open. 1-855-4-J-POTS. That's 1-855-457-6887. You can also email us at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Ready to listen up? Here is Jim Potts.
Hey, Jim Potts back on the air. Well, I tell you, what we're going to be talking about today is this business about free speech in the work environment, and even as applied to social media, because there's a lot of misunderstandings. One of the biggest misconceptions that employees hold is that First Amendment grants them free speech rights in the private workplace. And that's not true. The First Amendment right to free speech grants private sector employees zero constitutional rights and protections. It really honestly does. I used to teach United States constitutional law at the university that I taught at for a while. And First Amendment free speech is not as free as everybody thinks. And yes, there are some First Amendment protections regarding free speech, but there are some basics that are involved here. You know, you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire and then yell, freedom of speech. All right, so let's just use that as an example to keep in mind. But I want to focus on is free speech, the social media, and technically the work environment. Now, there's been some surveys out there regarding what Americans workers say that they believe in terms of their right to be able to post certain things on their particular social media website. And when they think that any action taken against them should be discriminatory. So again, there was a survey that was done, and one of the questions was, do you believe that getting fired because of a social media post is an infringement of First Amendment rights? Well, 41.2% said yes. There was 30.4% that said not sure, and 28% said no, it's not infringement. Now, I'm going to give you a story that happened not too long ago. I get a call from a client, and the issue was that a person put on their social media website, made a statement about a coworker. Now, here's what's interesting: they didn't give the coworker's name, and they didn't give the job site, the name of the company. Now, somebody else read the site and figured out who the person was talking to. That person goes to the person who was being talked about and says, hey, do you know, I just used the name Susie. Hey, do you know Susie put, you on, last night was on Facebook, and this is what she had to say about you. Well, when she did that, it created a major problem. They brought these two women in. These two women were very upset, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when the person complained, the employer said, well, we can't take any action against her for placing, because she put it on Facebook, and therefore it's freedom of speech. Now, there are some cases out there that I've seen that basically an employer can't take action against what an employee says after work on Facebook, because at that point they're off and they're giving an opinion, and it's the First Amendment freedom of speech protection. However, in this particular case, here's what happened. The woman that posted it, she posted it while she was at work, and I figured that out. I looked at it and said, wait a minute, this person was at work, not at home at the time that she posted it, so therefore she was using company time to be on social media. So that was addressed differently than her opinion. She was not reprimanded regarding her opinion about what she had to say. She was reprimanded for violating company policy regarding being on social media sites during working hours. And no, she was not on her break. And when she was confronted, she admitted that she was not on her break at the time that it was done. So But it raises up this other issue regarding freedom of speech again. Now, look, let me just tell you, putting things out there on social media now, putting things out there, yeah, it's out there. When you put something out on the internet these days, no matter when it is, it's going to be problematic. It can impact the work environment, and that's always going to create a problem. You know, people don't realize this business about the websites and, you know, and all of this technology that's out there. Now, social media has become a value recruitment tool also. Now, there's certain social media gurus out there that says 94% of recruiters use social media to find out the talent now. You know, they're using social media sites. I've got a cousin that's a United States, federal attorney who states that before she even hires anybody, she looks on social media. If they're on Facebook, she doesn't hire them. That's what her rule is. The social media scrutiny does not always stop once an individual is hired. That's the problem. Once people come on board. So that's why you have got to think before you post these things. Look, some of this is spiteful. Some of these things where people are putting these things out there are doing so to be mean. Then they come to work the next day, and they look in your face and they want to grin. It's hard to control people's emotions. And I'm going to tell you something, managers and supervisors that are listening to this can't take any adverse action for somebody posting something about you after hours. It's after hours for them. They want to state an opinion that you're an idiot, they can do that. Now, I know you're not going to be happy with that, but they're stating an opinion. My manager doesn't know what he's doing. You take personal issue with that and you take any action against that person, there's cases out there on that. You can't do it. And I tell managers and supervisors all the time, don't be out there, on these social media sites with your employees. Don't be friends with them because you're going to learn things that you may not want to know. This business of technology and the media and the social media is just it's going haywire out there. We had a call the other day. What happens? There's a woman who is going through some law enforcement program, and while she's in one of the classes that she's in, the officer tells them, and maybe tells her specifically, I don't know, that about this Megan's website, this Megan Law's website, and you need to always be aware of your surroundings and people you're working with, blah 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 blah. So what does she do? She goes to work the next day and gets on the Megan Law website. And what does she do? She finds one of the employees there is listed on the site as a sexual predator and shows it to two other people. Now look, you don't know the circumstances of why that person's there. Some of those names on those websites may be inaccurate. We don't know the circumstances by which they got put there. And not to mention the fact that what is an employee doing searching the net, once again, on company time? And how does she find this person's name? Well, as it turns out, she just started randomly going through everybody's name at work. I mean, these kind of things are ridiculous. So this business about social media and what you can do and not do, etc., is going to be problematic. Now, what the First Amendment really says, people who believe that it's against the law for an employer to fire them for offensive social media posts misunderstand the scope of the First Amendment. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects the right to freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and from government interference. But the most basic component of freedom of expression is the right of freedom of speech. The right of freedom of speech allows individuals to express themselves without interference or constraint by government. And that's what people don't understand as well. Now look, employers, I don't want you running around crazy out here because of the fact that they say something that has to do with business disparagement. Don't come to this company. They don't know what the heck they're doing. I don't want you to go in there in that direction. The litigation in this area, it seems like it's changing daily. So you need to be extremely, extremely careful. But remember also that the First Amendment says nothing about private employers. State and federal government employees may have some protections, right? Because simply that they work for the government. So there's exceptions here, but the exceptions may not apply to you. So don't run crazy with it. It's better to understand that having a policy regarding social media, and by the way, if you go to the government website for the Department of Labor, they actually have an example of a policy. a sample rather, of a policy that you can use as your social media policy. And it's pretty good. I've read it before. It's been adopted. I use it in some of the handbooks that I create. So go on the government website, Department of Labor, and that's the feds, and check that one out. But in the meantime, do not take any adverse action against an opinion, because to me, opinions can always be protected. But if they do it on company time, that's what you look for, because when they're on those social media websites on company time, they're stealing time from the company. All right, they're stealing time. So they're stealing time. All right, by doing it, and make sure that they're not using the company computers, because then they're using company computers for personal reasons as well. So at any rate, so I hope I've answered some of that. Look at it from that perspective. Don't run crazy with it, but there are certain ways that you can actually take action against a person if you follow the guidelines we talked about today. All right, with that last comment, it's time to close out this segment. And let me remind you, you can also hear us on Facebook at Listen Up, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Listen Up with Jim Potts. And as a reminder, we take calls every third Friday from 9:45 to about 11:15, and we can be reached at 855-4J-POTS or 855-457-6887. Or you can email us like so many people do at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Okay, I'm Jim Potts. I will continue to fight the fight. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for being a part of Listen Up with Jim Potts. We take your calls every third Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for your questions and concerns. Call us at 1-855-4J-POTS. That's 1-855-4J-POTS. Again, that's every third Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time at 1-855-4J-POTS. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, and link up with us on LinkedIn. You can also email us at listenup@jameswilliampottsllc.com. Until next time, make it a great week.